Mike Papantonio on the line with us from down Florida way. Mike Papantonio, the attorney and the host of Ring of Fire Radio, ringofireradio.com. And Pap, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you, Tom?
I am great, but I'll get better. It's nice to see you. There's a lot going on in the world today. But one of the things that really troubles me, I don't know if you saw this report that Li Fang, spelled like Fang, but he pronounces it Fang, wrote for The Nation about all this corporate media infrastructure, the right-wing media infrastructure that's being built out. They've got these so-called reporters in every state capital and feeding stories to local media. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thought is that it's again a story about the progressive movement not being a movement, to the sense that I think now it's about 15 years ago, a handful of progressives that tried to launch Air America Radio and actually make it into something that was a progressive infrastructure, went to leadership organization after leadership organization, whether it was MoveOn.org, whether it was Democracy Alliance, and said, look, we have to answer what's happening with the right-wing media build-out. And there's unfortunately, progressives have a bad element to their DNA a lot of times. And that bad element is, if it's not my idea, it's not important. And I remember being in a room with several of those meetings, face-to-face, saying, look, here's the problem. You can have all the great ideas you want. You can try to push back as much as you want. But if you don't have an infrastructure and a vehicle to do it, then all you're doing is wasting time. So this is another example. When we were telling them that Rush Limbaugh is a threat, the movement of Fox News is a threat, that we have to capture big ideas by way of a media infrastructure. Again, it was the leadership, time and time again, that came directly from the Democratic Party most of the time, that simply says, well, that's not our idea, so it seems unimportant. So, we find ourselves exactly where I would have predicted.
Yeah. And I think that there's a certain element, though, here, kind of an organic element to this, Mike Papantonio, that if you're a Koch brothers, if you're a billionaire, if you're a guy who is obsessed with making more and more and more money and having more and more political power, and you invest in building out a local think tank in every state capital in the United States, all 50 of them, and hiring at least 2, quote, reporters in every one of those state capitals, and having them feed stories to the local media because the local media has got all these cutbacks and things. We're talking chump change here. We're talking a couple, tens or hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
This is money that this is the amount of cash that Charles and David Koch probably make in about 35 minutes. And yet it has the ability to change the dialogue in the United States, and it will do so in a way that increases their profits. Now, if you go to progressives, if you go to wealthy progressives and say, it's going to make a better country, they go, yeah, and there's a lot of other things that make a better country too. Let's vaccinate everybody. Let's do something about housing. Let's do something about, whereas the billionaires are singularly focused on basically the tax code.
That's exactly right. We're not a movement. You see, they're a movement, Tom. We're such a disconnected cadre of individuals. For example, the DOMA group, they might focus singularly on the DOMA issue, and they might ignore the union movement. The environmentalists might focus singularly on their elements and ignore the women's movement. The civil justice process, all progressives ignore that for the most part. But on the other side, you have a well-disciplined group. Now, they may appear dysfunctional. They may be scattered in their methodology for getting their message out there. But ultimately, their message is the same. The anti-abortion right types toe the line for the free market capitalists. The gun rights advocates toe the line for the anti-immigrant zealots, because they think of themselves as a movement. They aren't always asking, what is in it for my unique little group? I got to tell you, I've been in the progressive movement my entire adult life. And the biggest problem, the biggest flaw that will kill the progressive movement is they don't think like that. They think, what is in it for my movement? For you have a movement with the right wing that, look, we can define it as prejudice, anti-intellectualism, nativism, class and race elitism, but they're on board for that ugly movement. The NRA funds the same think tanks that the anti-union advocates fund. We don't have that, and we never have, because we think we're so damn smart as progressives that it's only our idea that matters, and to hell with everybody else. And it's going to destroy this movement. I don't
disagree with the arc of your logic, but it seems to me that it's not so much that the environmentalists are saying, I'm not going to get into line behind, somebody whose big issue is the women's right to choose to have an abortion or not, or even have birth control or not. It's not that they're saying, we're not part of a movement. Well, maybe it is. Maybe it is. I wouldn't characterize it in a negative way. I would characterize it as, we've got these silos. We've got to figure out a way to have everybody realize that they're that.
Tom, the problem, and I simply disagree with you on this. I see it as I don't know whether it's in our DNA or what, but I have watched it my entire adult life as a progressive.
Yeah.
I watched it with the media issue. Right now, for example, you have this incredible vehicle right here, Free Speech TV. If you were to go around the country and find out, well, who backs Free Speech TV? Who backs this rare infrastructure? Who does that? Well, there's no plan. There's no consolidation of effort. There's no consolidation of money.
There's no billionaires. It's mostly the people who do the pledge drives.
Yeah, that's basically it.
The viewers.
And whether it's progressive radio, whether it is a progressive, there is no movement, Tom, and that's hard for us to accept.
So how do we fix that, Pat?
Well, first of all, is the recognition that it exists. That's the first thing, and then second of all, I think to be able to say to these people that believe that they're always right, there's nothing more agonizing. There was nothing more agonizing for me, whether it was practicing law at the level I practice law. I negotiate with the biggest organizations in the world, not just in America. But I never felt the frustration as much as I did when I went around trying to negotiate with people who had the money to help with a progressive effort. Yeah. And it would always land, Tom, on it's not my idea, so hell with it. I really promise. I hate to sound
America. I wonder, Pap, if it might be. I mean, I've had this conversation with John Dean, who wrote "Conservatives Without Conscience," Richard Nixon's guy, and he said that conservatives are genetically or however they're wired, they will salute the flag. They are followers. And so they don't mind having a leadership. In fact, they're more comfortable when there's a leadership. Progressives, on the other hand, are people who think that we should all have relatively equal power. We should have a more egalitarian society. And they get very nervous when somebody says, I'm in charge. And if any group, if Greenpeace were to come out and say, we're going to organize a movement for everybody. Hey, you women's rights movement folks, come on over. Hey, you anti-GMO folks, come on over. Everybody's going to go, Greenpeace? I don't think so. You know? And it's like, because I think progressives don't like the idea of centralized leadership.
Well, it's unfortunate. I think you're right, but I think ultimately the demise of the progressive movement if we don't get it under control. Yeah.
Well, we've got to find. I think increasingly we're finding our voices, certainly on the internet and in the progressive media structure that we've been building out, that uses the internet as well as traditional radio, television, podcasts, and everything else. And Ring of Fire Radio is an important part of it. ringofireradio.com. Mike Papantonio, thanks for being with us, Pat.
Thank you, Tom.